Good morning. Welcome to those of you who have already turned up. I'm just waiting for my co-host Jenny to join us. So please make yourselves comfortable, get yourselves a glass of water, cup of coffee. And if you have not got the workbook yet, please let me know and I will pop that into the chat box, because the workbook is really handy to either have on screen or to print out and have sitting next to you to help you with the workshop as we go through it. Thanks, Ken. I'm just waiting for my computer to wake itself up and allow me into my OneDrive, and then I'm going to send that through to you. Actually, it might be on Dropbox if I can find it for you. Right, I will send you a Dropbox link in a moment. Right, got it. Okay, just going to pop that through now. Good morning, Gray. Good morning, Rishab. Good morning, Ken. I'm just getting you the workbook for those who may not have it yet. So this workbook is just something that we give to all attendees. I'm going to pop it into the chat now. Morning, Gray. And that will just, if you're able to print it out, fantastic. I love old-fashioned pen and paper, but even if you have it on your screen, it will just help. It gives a bit more depth about the stuff that we're talking about on screen. And there's also some questions and things in there that you can actually answer as well. Morning, Nick. Just saying, we're just making sure everybody has got the workbook to go along with this workshop. So that workbook link is in the chat. Let me know if that doesn't work. It certainly should do. Good morning, Corinne. Good morning, Jesus. Thank you for joining us. We're just waiting for Jenny to join me. She should be here any moment now. In the meantime, if you haven't got the workbook, I've just put a link in the chat for the workbook, which hopefully you can all see. If you can't see it, let me know and I shall add that to it. And we'll get started in a moment. Hi, Corinne. Now, I'm doing this webinar today with Jenny, and I normally have an assistant here who actually helps me, but sadly she is still stuck in Korea with COVID and unable to get back into New Zealand. So I'm going to try and manage all the technology myself, which should go fine, but if anything goes a little bit wrong, just bear with me. So hopefully you're all seeing my screen at the moment with the Get a Grip on there. Can somebody in the chat just confirm that they can see that? Thank you very much. Excellent. Hey, just while we're waiting, if you wouldn't mind popping in the chat for me, where are you actually zooming in from? Where are you based? Chicago. Wow, awesome. What time is it there in Chicago? Melbourne, welcome, Gray. Melbourne, fantastic. Melbourne, if you're from Melbourne, that's great. Yep, I can do that. Just one moment. Yeah, okay, great. Morning,
now
Jeni.
I'm pretending to be Nick.
You're pretending to be Nick. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we've got Jeni here now, so that's fantastic. Hey, welcome everybody. Hopefully you're in the right place. We're here to talk to you about getting a grip on your business, which is sharing these 6 keys to getting what you want from your entrepreneurial company. My name is Debra Chantry-Taylor. I'm a professional EOS implementer, and as you can see on screen, we have Jeni Clift as well, who is based in Melbourne.
Morning.
Morning. So I just want to give you a quick intro to what we're going to cover off today. So we are going to be talking about EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I'm basically going to show you a really simple tool and concepts that will help you with your business. And so Jeni and I are going to take you through this step by step. We're going to help you get real about your business and yourself. We're going to help you keep things really simple, and we're going to focus on the stuff that will actually get results from your business. So before we get started, I'm going to try out my technology. I'm going to launch a quick poll just so we can actually see who we've got on the call with us. So a couple of questions for you. It's are you a business owner? Are you a business leader? Are you a business manager? And what size is your business? So if you could pick one of those for us, that would be absolutely fantastic. And just check and see. Good to see everybody doing that. That's great. And I'm just wondering also how many of you know something about EOS. So I'm going to try and see if I can share the next one. So what do you know about EOS? And also, which of those frustrations I'm going to pop up on the poll are you actually experiencing at the moment in your business? Again, it will just give Jeni and I a chance. We're very down to earth, very practical. We love to give experiences and shares of things. So if we can understand where you're coming from, we'll make sure we actually tailor the webinar to actually help you with that. And just once again, while you're doing that, I have, we do have a workbook that goes along with this webinar. And if you haven't got it, I'm popping that link again into the chat box so you can actually get hold of that. This workbook is actually quite good for the webinar, but also for following up as well. Great. Okay. Awesome. Right. Well, let's get started then. Thank you for that. Really appreciate that. Gives us some insight. So as I said, we're here to talk to you about EOS. We've got an agenda in mind. So we're going to talk about getting real. We're going to make sure we keep it simple. We're going to help you get results in your business. EOS is all about getting results in your business. So when I talk about getting real, Kurt Gödel, who was one of Einstein's contemporaries, actually proved scientifically that you can't be part of a system and at the same time understand that system. So I want you to kind of close your eyes and how to think about lifting yourself up above those weeds and actually get real about what's really happening in your business. So take yourself away from the day-to-day roles that you do and what's going on for you, and try and think about you know, what it looks like outside of that system. And I'm just seeing Ken saying he hasn't received the workbook. There's a link in the chat there, Ken. Can you see that link? I'll just put it in there again. So if you just click on that link, it's a Dropbox link. It should take you straight away to that workbook. Okay, so we're going to get real in terms of just making sure you take yourself up out of those weeds. Think about being a director of the business. Think about what's really going on in your business as much as possible when we're talking through this. Try and think about how that relates to your business. In terms of us, in terms of EOS, those of you who don't know much about EOS, we've got a couple who don't know anything at all and a couple who know a little. The brief history of EOS, it's actually an operating system that was actually developed by a guy called Gino Wickman. And Gino Wickman is an American who was brought in to actually help in his father's business. He was in his mid-20s. His father's business was plateauing. He was brought in to try and help lift that company back up again. And he is an amazing man. If you ever get to meet him, very, very bright guy, very smart, read all the business books. And he decided to take all of this great genius stuff from books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, Patrick Lencioni's books around team health, the E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber, worked with Vern Harnish from Scaling Up, and Dan Sullivan from whatever Dan Sullivan's coaching company is called. And he basically pulled together all of this amazing information. So this is actually quite complex. How do we simplify this down? How do we make this really, really usable for an entrepreneurial business? And what he did was he discovered that, you know, there's nothing new in business. There's no magic silver bullets, but there are sort of two discoveries that there are two distinct types of entrepreneurial companies, but all entrepreneurs are hardwired in a similar way. And we all wrestle with the same 136 issues. So the great businesses solve these issues at the root cause. And he started EOS to actually help them to understand where those issues were and actually help them to resolve them. So it started 20 odd years ago. There are now 111,000 companies, I think, around the world actually using EOS. There are 11 or 12,000 companies almost using an implementer, and there's about 460 EOS implementers around the globe that actually help that. So the key thing is that, you know, when the feeling of stuck happens to all of us, Jeni and myself both run businesses. We completely understand what it feels like to get to a certain point and go, hey, look, I've hit the ceiling. How do I get through there? Geno's system is designed to actually help you get out of that. So frustrations that you might experience in your business, you know, having that lack of control. We're all very, well, I don't know about everybody, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a control freak. Letting go can be really hard. And so it's like, how do you actually overcome that sort of that issue of control, frustration of control? Lack of profit. Put in really, really simple terms, just not having enough profitability. The money might be great, the business might be good, but we haven't got enough profit in the business. People, Jeni's going to talk a lot more about this, but people are often sort of some of the main issues that a business actually experiences, just because people actually make the business, but they can also break the business. Hitting the ceiling.
It's the best part of the business, people.
Yeah, of course it's, yeah. And hitting the ceiling, which is very much around, you know, we all go through this, whether it's on an individual level, a departmental level, an organizational level. It's where you kind of, you know, we get taught in university that businesses grow in this classic, beautiful S-shaped curve, but that doesn't happen in real life. What happens is we grow a little bit, we hit a ceiling, we start bouncing around for a while, and it's only if we can actually break through that ceiling we can get to the next level. Otherwise, sadly, a lot of businesses either plateau off and they just stay at the same kind of level in the same frustrations, or they'll actually die off altogether. We know how that happens. And finally, there's the whole frustration of nothing's working. So nothing working is, you know, you've read all the books, you've tried all the different methodologies. There's some really great business systems out there, but some of them, in my honest opinion, just a little bit too complex. So when I came across EOS, I loved the fact that it was really, really simple, but works. So if you've now got the workbook, hopefully you will have got it on page, where is it? I'm going to say page
2.
Yep, page 2. You will see there's an organizational checkup. And I do want to take a couple of moments and just answer these 20 questions really honestly, thinking about where you are at in your business right now, and not just from your perspective, but from the whole organization's perspective. And where 1 is, you know, you're not doing so great, or it's very weak, and 5 is awesome or very strong. So just have a quick think about these 20 questions and either answer them by ticking off the boxes and having a look at that. It's really just to get you thinking about where the challenges might be for you. There is also an electronic version, which I'll ask Jeni to send through to you as well. If you get the chance either during this webinar or after the webinar, do fill that out. You get an amazing report that actually shows you exactly where you sit on these 6 key components, and it gives you tips and tools as well about how you can actually overcome that. As
2 seconds, I'll just put that in the chat.
Perfect. And I see we've got a few more people joining us. Have you all received the workbook? Just that has been sent. It came through with the updated part of the Zoom webinar, but we've also put that link into the chat box. So have we all got a copy there of that workbook? And Jeni's
I'll just copy that link there so that anybody, I think when you join, you can't go back and see any chat prior. So they're there as well. So the organizational online checkup link is there, and the workbook link is there to download.
Perfect. Great. So 20 questions. As I said, answer each one honestly. It's really just about getting a sense of where you think your business actually sits right now, and where some of those challenges or issues might actually be, and also opportunities, of course. Great. So I'm going to hope that you've done that. There is a really, really simple thing in the workbook where you can add those up, and it will just give you a sense of where you're sitting, and it'll give you some action points to do based on where you sit in that organizational checkup as well. Okay, so we're all really about keeping it simple. And this is a thing that I really completely fell in love with EOS. So I came across EOS when they launched into my event space here in Auckland. And I had been a coach for about 10 years, and I had been running businesses for 25 years. And I had read all the books, I'd done the MBA. And when I came across the EOS process, the model, the tools, the things that we use, it was just really, really simple. And that's what I fell in love with. So I'm going to take you through now, very briefly, an overview of the EOS model, and then what we're going to do is we'll take a second pass around this, and Jeni and I will talk to the individual segments of this model, but also give you the foundational tools that we use to help you overcome the challenges in those business. So the EOS model.
Deborah, before we jump into that, do you want to just do a very brief intro of you, and then I'll do one of me, and then
I always forget about that, don't I?
We get excited and stuff.
We do get excited. We want to share this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So my name is Debra. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a professional EOS implementer. I'm a business owner. I have been running businesses. My very first one, I was 13 years old. Didn't make millions, sadly, but still had this bug throughout my entire life. And so I've run a multitude of businesses, and then became a coach probably around about 12 years ago now. Worked with the Ice House for a number of years, went out on my own, and then about 2.5 years ago I came across EOS and just fell in love with what it did. I now use it to run my current business, and I help other businesses to actually implement it into their business. And Jeni, who is based over in Melbourne.
Yes, I'm in Torquay, so just out of Melbourne, a beautiful part of the world. So my story is I've run businesses alongside my husband for the last 25 years in the IT services industry. I started my coaching journey probably 10 years ago now. We actually employed coaches in the business, and I just loved the impact that it had on me and our staff, so I went down that path. Nick and I always had this dream of being an employee-led business. We just wanted to upskill our staff and just get out of their way and let the team run the business. And we always had this dream of, sort of sitting on a Greek island, although that's kind of changed to Phillip Island at the moment until we can leave the country. And call in on a Monday and say, how's it going? Great job. Talk to you next week. But we'd never been able to get the business to that point, never been able to get systems or structure. And we knew that that's what we needed. We'd looked at different things that are too complicated. And about 3 years ago, or probably 4 years ago now, 2018, we came across EOS. We're at a conference in the US. I went to one session, the guy sitting next to gave me the traction book. Nick went to a different section, came back with a traction book, and we literally met and said, we've got to do this. So came home and found an implementer to work with us. 12 months later, I had handed over my role of general manager that I'd been wanting to hand over for about 10 years, and then trained as an EOS implementer. So I've been doing this for about 3 years, but it just changed our lives. It just allowed us to fulfill that dream of getting out of the way of our team. And we've now merged our business a couple of years ago with another, and we're now exiting that business completely and doing this full time. So yeah, so that's my story.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. I forget about people. I just want to get straight into the process. Okay, thanks, Jeni. So we have, just for you as who are on the webinar as well, we have got Q&As. Jeni's going to help me to actually answer that. We haven't got Jen here this week, so we're going to be trying to manage that technology ourselves, but feel free to ask questions along the way. So quick pass around the EOS model. Let me introduce you to it. Then let's get into more detail. So the key thing about the EOS model, it has your business right at the center. And then, as I said, Gina discovered we have about 136 issues that are common across every single business. And they fall basically into 6 key areas that you need to strengthen in order to overcome these issues and build a stronger business. The first one is very much around vision. And we all know this is like, often we have this vision in our head, but until we can actually take it out, articulate it, get everybody 100% on the same page, it's really hard to take the business forward. We have to have everybody swimming in the same direction, rowing in the same direction, whatever analogy you want to use. The second component is very much around people. And as I said in the beginning, people can make or break a business. So when we talk about people, we're wanting to make sure that we have the right people who kind of share the values of the organization, but are also in the right seats doing the right things. Data is very much around measuring stuff that makes a difference. So I don't know about you, I've worked in corporates for many, many years of my life before I went to my own business. And often some of the stuff that we measured was ego driven. It was about making us feel good, look good. It wasn't about making decisions in the business. So ensuring that we actually have data that we can actually make really informed decisions on and that will actually drive the business forward. Issues is around, silly as it sounds, it's actually identifying issues and listing them and writing them down somewhere. So without a doubt, we all have issues, and issues aren't always negative. They can be a positive as well. So it can be an opportunity, but it's about making sure that we identify them, we put them into a list, and then most importantly, we do something with them. Don't spend our entire life, discussing them and getting nowhere. And then processes around making sure that our core processes are actually documented so that we know what those core processes are, agreeing on that, not having to write a manual for every single thing that we do, make sure those core things are actually covered and they're sort of followed by all. And then finally, there's traction. And traction is about, if you've got all this stuff, you've got vision without traction, it's hallucination. If you don't bring this down to the ground where the rubber hits the road and make sure you have some things keeping you on track, you won't actually get there. So the idea, vision without traction is hallucination. The idea is if we can work on strengthening those 6 key components, we're aiming for 100% across all 6, but 80% is where we're sort of really aiming to get to. We will actually then have a stronger, more profitable business where you'll have vision, everybody 100% on the same page, traction in terms of knowing what you're accountable for and actually achieving it, and healthy in terms of an open, honest and vulnerable kind of leadership team who are all working for the greater good. So that's the model. As I said, we are aiming for 100%, where the goal is to get to 80%. Just out of interest, I don't know if you can actually answer me in the Q&A, but where do you think most businesses are based on the things that you have done on your checkup and what you know about business? Where do you think most businesses actually are on that scale of 0 to 100? Anybody got any ideas? I'm going to tell you what the Americans say. The Americans say that most businesses are sit around 20%. I've got to be honest that, yeah, thanks. I think that, Corinne, we're looking at what Jeni and I see with the businesses that we work with. They're generally more around that 30 to 40% in Australia and New Zealand. I think that's because we're obviously a little bit ahead of the rest of the world, as we are both in the time zone as well. But it's good. So, but still.
Colin, you're optimistic, 545%.
545%. Yeah, so the idea is we're going to take it, we're going to take you from where you are at, and we're aiming for obviously 100% being nirvana, but 80% being the best. So now let me just take you through these individual components. And this is where Jeni and I will switch in and out, so you haven't got to listen to me all morning, don't worry. Vision component. One of the things that I love about EOS is the simplicity. And, the vision component, we talk about a thing called the 8 questions. And the 8 questions literally forms this thing called a vision traction organizer. And this is actually what it ends up looking like when it is done. This is mine for my business. It is printed out, laminated, sits here on my desk. But the idea is if we can get all of our people understanding the answers to these 8 basic questions, then we will have a much stronger team. They'll understand where we're headed, why we're doing it. So it's made up of 2 pages. The first page is very much about vision. And I'm going to come back to the individual bits in a moment. The second page is very much around the traction. How do we actually bring this down to the ground? So let me take you through the 8 questions quickly. And if you turn to your workbook on page 5, you've got a copy of this here, which you can actually start to make some notes on, and you can replicate that. We can give an electronic version for that as well. So the first question is, what are the core values? How do you actually operate in your business? What are the core values that everybody in the organization makes decisions on? How do you hire, fire, reward based on these core values? And having worked in corporates for many years, this is often an exercise, a tick box exercise where we kind of go, yeah, well, we want to be this. I remember at Tower, they actually decided they would take the word Tower and try and force some values into it, and it was disastrous. And there's also other kind of values that people will use, aspirational values, permission to play values. What we're really looking for is we're looking for to discover these values from within our people. So not necessarily coming up with them, we'd like to be like this, but actually if you took your 2 or 3 best employees, what are the values that they exhibit that you actually want to replicate throughout the organization? We then define them. We go, right, if we've got these 3 to 5 core values, how do we actually define them? They've got a singular word. It might be grow or die, be one of our values, for example. What does grow or die actually mean? It means that we're always looking for different ways to do things. We're challenging the status quo. We're making sure that we're actually pushing those boundaries. And then we have to live and breathe them. So that's making sure that we hire, we fire, we reward based on these core values in our organization. And so it's a very, it's an exercise I'm sure you've seen many, many times before, but I think the way that EOS does it is very much around making sure we are actually looking at what is happening in the organization and how, in a good way, and how we actually replicate that. So that's the first question, question 1. Question 2 comes down to, what is our core focus? And there are really 2 spheres to this. So the first part is, what is your purpose, your cause, or your passion? So I liken this to your Simon Sinek why. Why do you actually exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? What keeps you going when times are tough? And this is the thing that actually brings the whole team together based around a common purpose, cause, or passion. So I know that I personally talk about my passion being helping entrepreneurs to lead better lives. And then the niche comes down into the, what is it you can be the best in the world at, in terms of who, compared to other people, what do you actually do that you can be the best in the world at? So for us, it is about helping entrepreneurial leadership teams to gain traction. So there's 2 parts to that, and it's really important that you have everybody understand what that means. The first one's usually quite broad. The second one gets very granular about what you actually do. The third question is around the 10-year target, and this is what Jim Collins will call a big, hairy, audacious goal. Doesn't matter what you call it. This is the guiding light, the compass, the northern star. This is the how do we make sure that all of those people are rowing in the same direction and know where they're headed to. The example I like to use is the Volvo example when they set their 2020 vision, which was that nobody would be seriously harmed or killed by a Volvo. And that just gave the organization a single point of focus. It was measurable. They could see if they'd achieved it, and they're actually looking at how they actually take that forward. So what's the one thing you want from your business? It's 5 to 30 years out, and it's the number 1 goal that is not financial. It's really important. Finances won't motivate most people. Unless you're a wealth management company, then funds under management might be exciting. But for most people, we want something more than that. What's the bigger goal that we're actually aiming towards? The next question is around the marketing strategy, and this can take a while to go through, but it's really about simplifying down the marketing strategy. I'm a marketer by trade, so this is not about a marketing plan that goes into every single action you do, but it's about the strategy. So who is your target market on the list? What do they look like? What are their psychographics or their demographics? How do you actually describe that target market on the list you're actually going after? And then when you think about that target market or the list, what are the 3 uniques that will actually appeal to them, that will solve their pain points? So I mentioned to you previously, vision, traction, healthy is the 3 uniques for EOS. In terms of those individually, there might be other companies out there who will actually have 1 or 2 of those, but nobody will have all 3 of them, and all 3 of them together form your kind of unique proposition. And those 3 uniques are the things you use externally in your marketing and your sales calls to actually help people understand what you do. Then there's 2 other components which exist in some companies, not others. A proven process. Do you have a proven process that says, if you work with us, we take you through this process, and as we go through it, this is how we can guarantee our results. So the EOS process, I'm not sure if that is actually on this slide or not, but it takes you through, this is how we work with you as an organization. And then the guarantee is something that, is it there, Jeni?
Yeah, I just came off mute. Sorry. Yeah, the next slide is the EOS process. Yeah,
perfect. So that I'll show you that in a second. And then the guarantee is the part that goes alongside with that proven process and says, hey, what does this mean? How do we take the fear away of actually doing it? So in the proven process with EOS, I'm not going to take you through it exactly, but we say, hey, this is where we start from, and then we take you through this process, what we cover off in those particular things. Here's the spacing around the timing. We go to a 90-day world, and then we have a guarantee that backs it up, that says, hey, if you work with an EOS implementer, you work with us day by day, no contracts, no letters of engagement, we just work with you day by day, and if you don't see value, you do not pay. So that takes away the fear of somebody wanting to go through this process. And that's what we ask clients. Do you have a process? And do you also have a guarantee you can back that up with? That's the marketing strategy, pretty simple. The 3-year picture is something that I have to say I quite like. it is something that's quite unique in terms of, this is not about the absolute numbers. We have numbers there for sure. You've got to have revenue, you've got to have profit, you've got to have some high level measurables. This is about painting a picture of what does it actually look like. And so what you do is you actually describe what the company will be like in 3 years' time. I was working with an IT company the other day, and they were basically talking about that they wanted to have really cool offices. They wanted to win some awards. They wanted to be working on really cool projects. They wanted to be the place that was, one of the best places to work. They wanted suppliers and clients coming to them rather than having to go out and chase them. So they painted that picture. And then what they actually did was they sat there with their they've got 130 odd staff around New Zealand, and they actually had them all close their eyes and they described this picture to them. And the idea is somebody who is the right person in your organization will sit there and go, hell yeah, that's what I want to be part of. And that's the power of the 3-year picture. Once you've got that vision page set out, the next page just really brings it down to the ground. So I think it's on the next page of your workbook. You can see that page, whatever number that is on my thing, page 5. So this is about breaking it down to chunks that are really meaningful. And we always talk about less is more, or weniger aber besser, which means less but better. And the idea is that the 1-year plan has got somewhere between 3 and 7 goals that we're aiming for in the year, feeding into that 3-year picture, feeding into that 10-year target. But what's the future date? What's the revenue, what's the profit, what's the measurables, and then what are the 3 to 7 goals for the year. And once we've set that, we've got to break it down to bite-sized chunks. This is where the rocks come into it, is if we think about rocks, what are the things for the next 90 days that we can actually break the 1-year plan into bite-sized chunks that need to be done in order to take you forward towards that 1-year plan. And again, less is more, 3 to 7 rocks. You'll have rocks for the company, rocks for the department, rocks for individuals. The idea is just making sure we have a really laser sharp focus about how we actually achieve that. And then finally is the issues list. And this is really about keeping a track of those things. And like I said, issues are not always negative. It could be an opportunity. We've got this great opportunity to have an M&A, merger and acquisition with another company. It could be that there is a change in the environment we can take advantage of in the new year. Or it could be an issue around something going on in the business or something external. So we keep a track of these issues. We resolve what we can on a weekly basis, but nevertheless, once a quarter, we get together and we go, right, what are the key issues in the business? How do we actually resolve them? And that is the 8 questions. So once you've got that, you've got your document, you need to make sure that it is shared by all. And that just involves making sure that you're repeating it regularly in front of your team, that they've got a copy of this available to them to see at all times. They're referring to it in their level 10 meetings. So just making sure it's kept on mind. We have these State of the Nation updates as well. And that is the vision components. And I'm going to hand over to Jeni, who's going to take over the screen. And she is going, that's what 100% strong looks like. She's going to talk to you about people.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. And just on that last one, Deborah, that you said about sharing with all, I was talking with somebody just recently up in Canberra, and when I asked that question around vision, the owner of the business rated a 5 out of 5 for the vision, and he had 2 new people sitting in the room. They'd been there, I think, 3 and 4 months, and they wrote it, both rated it a 1 because he just hadn't shared it. So in his mind, everybody was clear, everybody was in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. But 2 members of his leadership team said, we don't know what the vision is. Easy fix. Basically after that meeting, you can go and have that conversation, but it's just so important to make sure that you've actually articulated and shared that vision. So, but let's jump into, jump out of full screen so I can see my slides and hit the next button. So we are going to talk now about my favorite topic, which is people. And this is, for any business, really what can, I guess, make or break. And from an EOS perspective, what we're looking at is making sure that you have the right people. So they're the people that fit your culture. If you could clone them, you would have dozens of them, love having them around, and they just, love coming to work every day and love what they do. And there's a couple of tools that we use for this. So the first one I'll talk about is the People Analyzer. So this on page 6 of the workbook. And this is a really simple tool. So I'll just populate our values across the top. So these are the values of the EOS Implementer community. So we're humbly confident, we grow or die, help first. So that's doing things without any expectation of return, do the right thing and do what you say. And then we go through and put our people in. In our business, we always use this as a recruiting tool. After interviews, we'd sit down and say, well, you know, do we think that this person actually fits our values? We also brought it out when we had a people issue in the business. So the rating is plus. This Maria fits the value of humbly confident. She lives that value day in, day out. Jalen, not so much. We've given him a minus, which is rarely or never, and plus minus is most of the time. So then we just go through and do that rating for each member of the team. And the way that we use this was we would always rate the leadership team first to give us that bar, which is what is an acceptable level against those values. So in this case, we've said 4 pluses and a plus minus. You would never see a minus. You wouldn't have somebody in the business that does not live that value. So that gives you the bar, and then it gives you that sort of, you know, how you rate people. Are they at or above that bar? So that's the first tool that we use. So simple, but really powerful. We also use that as our quarterly conversation, and we got people to self-rate. And if it was a plus minus, we'd say, well, how can we get that to a plus? And the next part of this is right seats, making sure that people are in the right seat or the right role. You know, were they born to do it? They love it. You know, putting me in a finance seat is definitely not the right seat. I'd prefer to, lots of things I'd prefer to do than finance, not my thing. But, you know, I've always worked in that people and culture, which I know for a lot of people is the last thing that they would want to be doing. So making sure that you're in that role that you love, born to do it. So from an EOS perspective, we look at structure first and people second. So we don't look at the people we've got and then say, well, how we make the business sort of fit into these people? You know, this person's really good at that, so we'll create a role for them. Is it actually what the business needs is the way that we look at it. So structure for the business first, and then we go and put people in. So we use a tool that we call the accountability chart. So if I'll start below that dotted line at the integrator. This is the person who keeps the trains running on time, and they're removing obstacles and really making sure that that next level of management, the head of the teams, can do their job really well. So we say, what's the function? And then we start looking at the roles within each of those functions. And then we go to the name, we go putting the names in. So we go through LMA is lead, manage, and hold people accountable. So the head of marketing sales has to make sure that he's leading the team, he's managing them, but he's also holding them accountable. Is responsible, he or she, for marketing, hitting the sales numbers, selling, and account management. So that is the functions within that role. So we go through and we do that for the entire team. So this is our integrator, or if you'd like to think of it as sort of the composer, the conductor. They're holding the orchestra together. They're keeping everybody on time and in rhythm. They have full control over performance, full creative control, and they deal with any issues within the orchestra. And another tool that we use, we call GWC. I think from memory that's on page 8. Is that right, Deborah? Because at EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, we love a good 3-letter acronym. So GWC stands for gets it. So does the person that we're going to put into this role, do they actually get it? Were they born with the desire and the skills to actually be able to perform this role really well? Do they want it? And we've got some really interesting answers from this. Somebody's been in a role for 3 years, it's changed, and now it's not really what they want to do. Or there's they want to move up. So I'm sitting here, but I really want that manager's role. So what can we do to get them into that role? And the last one, C, is capacity. Do they actually have the capacity to do that? So I always think of gets it as born with, and then capacity is what you've learned since then. What skills, what experience, what certifications, qualifications have you gained through your life that actually help give you the capacity to do that. So it's not necessarily about time. That can play a little bit into it. You don't want one person sitting in every role, because then you get into a time capacity. But this is more about skills and experience than that time component. So what we do here is we come back to our people analyzer, and we put our GWC at the end of it, and we say, well, Maria, who's our gold star person, she's got a plus for all of our values, and then we give her a yes, no answer against the get it, want it. So yes, she gets the role, she wants it, and she has the capacity. Jalen, yes, he or she gets it, yes, wants it, capacity, no. So we've got a real people issue here with Jalen, and Amina doesn't get it. We actually don't think that Amina understands what the role is. So then that gives you the capacity to go back and say, well, is the PD, is the position description actually clear? Do we need to do some work here? Or just doesn't get it, they're just in the wrong seat. And what we want to get to the point of is having somebody in each of these roles that is a yes, yes, yes. Particularly, the big one for me is if somebody doesn't want to be in a role, how can we move them within the organisation? If they're a right person for the business, are they in the wrong seat? Can we move them? And that often depends on the size of the business and other factors that come into play. So, right seats, we determine the function, we determine those roles, and then we have a look at the people who are we going to put into those. Sometimes they can sort of end in a vote, basically. We do have instances where we'll go into a meeting and so people will get moved around, and sometimes people at the leadership team may not be right for the leadership team. They may come off that. And what we want to do ultimately is come back with the organisation looking like this. So the integrator, as I said, they are the person that runs on time. The visionary, that very top role, EOS say about 50% of businesses have a visionary. I actually think it's probably higher than that. But the visionary is the person who they don't lead, manage, or hold people accountable. They are at 30,000 feet. They do big relationships. They're creative problem solvers. They really drive that vision. They can see, what nobody else can see, where that business is going. And if you put them in a role of integrator, you'll have a business that has huge peaks and real troughs. So again, it's putting them in a role where in any part of the organisation, but particularly at that visionary level, have them in a position where they can drive that vision and they're about culture and just really sort of driving the business forward, but they're really not good at particularly that accountability piece. What we see is two kinds of people issues. Right person, so the right person for the business, they fit the culture, you love having them around, they're in the wrong seat. So do you have the capacity to move them into the right seat? One of the hardest things I've ever had to do through my business was to manage a person out who'd been with us for 7 years. The business had outgrown that person and their capacity, so we had to manage her out. It was incredibly difficult. She'd been with us for a long time, but we tried putting her in different seats and there was not a right seat for her. So sometimes you just have to make that call and go through the pain, again, for the good of the business. It was nothing personal. She was the right person. We just didn't have a right seat for her anymore. The big one, though, is a wrong person in the right seat. So I see this sometimes in a sales role. You've got a person who is selling, they're bringing the dollars in, but they're selling something that you can't deliver. When I've got a client with somebody like this, it's, big plead, please, you've got to move this person on, even though they're bringing the dollars in. What damage are they causing to your reputation, to the staff morale, to the culture of the business? They can be chipping away. You can lose good people who are frustrated because it's leaders. We're not doing what we need to do and move that person on. And, great people can be a fantastic person. They're just not the right culture fit for your business. So what we're aiming is to end up with everywhere you look in the business, you have the right people. They're in the right seats. And again, aiming to get 100% strong, that's utopia, never going to happen. So really, getting to 80% is our aim. So Deborah, back to you for data.
Thank you, Jeni. Okay, so I'll switch back. So data, as I said in the intro, I think it's really important that we're measuring things that are actually helpful for making decisions. So as a leadership team, we use a couple of tools. The first is what we call, actually, that's a good point, really good quote here that I love from the former Netscape CEO. So if we have data, let's look at that data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. And you'll see this happen a lot in organizations. If we haven't got that data, then we'll go with the person who's strongest in the organization, their opinion. So we use a couple of tools to make sure we actually are measuring the right things and we're using them in a constructive way. And we have this thing called a scorecard. And again, not rocket science, no magic silver bullets, but it's about what gets measured gets done. And so we have this scorecard, which can be electronically on a dashboard. We've got some tools we use for that. It can be just a spreadsheet on an Excel spreadsheet, or I've actually seen clients print this thing out, write it in by hand and actually highlight it with green or pink highlighters. I don't really mind how you do it. But the key thing is we have to make sure that the stuff that we are measuring and looking at on a weekly basis is stuff that can help us make the right decisions. So we have a list of measurables, somewhere between 5 and 15, and they have to be a mixture of both lagging things. So weekly revenue is lagging, you can't change it. And then leading indicators in terms of how many sales calls are we making, how many sales meetings, how many proposals, the things that actually are before the actual business comes in and gives us a chance to see if things are going wrong. So we have the measurables, we have a goal in mind. So in this case, we've got a weekly revenue target of 84,500, cash balance of 14,000. Cash is king, obviously, in the business. And then we go right from that accountability chart that Jeni was just talking about. Who does this actually sit with? And so the weekly revenue and the cash balance, obviously, the finance function sits with Anne. The sales stuff, the sales calls, the sales meetings, the proposals, closed business sits with Robert, who's probably got the sales seat. David is looking after customer satisfaction, etc., etc. And then what we do is we literally start to record it every week, but we keep it on a 13-week rolling basis. And the idea behind this is we are looking at absolute. So we might say 1 week we haven't met that sort of goal, that target for the week, but we actually want to see trends as well. So in this particular example, the black ones are the ones who have achieved it. Red means we haven't. So if you look at the sort of 14th, 21st of October, where we haven't achieved the revenue, chances are that before that, there will be a lack of the leading indicators being the sales call, sales meetings. So in this example here, 32 and 48 sales calls below what we're requiring of 50, which means lo and behold, 2 weeks later, revenue has dropped. So we're looking at this in a leadership team capacity initially, going, what is actually happening in the business? And the way that I like to describe it is, imagine, and you have to imagine right now because we can't go anywhere, but imagine if you were stuck on a desert island somewhere and the cabana boy or girl comes across with your cocktail, he's got my margarita, goes, Mrs. Chantry-Taylor, I've got your margarita here for you and here is your scorecard. You should be able to look at that scorecard and either go, wow, things are looking great. Order me another margarita. I'm staying for 2 more weeks. Or holy smoke, get me on a plane. I need to get back to Auckland quickly. Things are not quite going as they planned. So it should have that kind of level of impact on the business. And we have this at a leadership team level, we have it at a departmental level. So in the sales and marketing department, they might get into a whole lot more detail around what's behind these numbers. But the idea is very much about you need to be able to use these numbers to make decisions in the business. So they're not vanity metrics. They're not making us feel good. They're actually going, you know, what does this mean? And I can speak from personal experience, both from myself and from my clients. Throughout COVID was tough, right? We had a couple of years, whatever it might be, several months where things were really, really tough. Our measurables on our scorecard didn't look great for a while. Now, we could have sat there and gone, oh, well, there's not much we can do about that. We'll just ignore it and continue on. But what it actually was forced us to take note of what was really going on. And it forced us to realize if we continued the way we were going, we weren't going to continue. So how do we actually make changes to make sure we actually got through it? And it actually forced a different thinking for us. It's like, okay, we can't continue like this. We can't continue to not get our revenue, not get these things going out, not have the in-person meetings we hope to have. So how do we actually change that? So the scorecard becomes a really, really important part of it. And I know that it takes a while to get a good scorecard. Some of my companies are up to their sort of 3rd or 4th scorecard and they've finally nailed it. They often start with 20 measurables. And it's like, okay, if you'd like to do that, that's fine. But usually by about 6 to 9 months, they're down to sort of somewhere around about 7 to 10 measurables, and then they're getting the right results. So that's the scorecard. It's not rocket science, but the idea is that we have one at that leadership team level, which every single week in our weekly meetings, we're looking at them, and we're looking at it for the purposes of making decisions. So we're going, have we hit it? Have we hit it? Not hit. Then we've got departments. So marketing will have one, sales will have one, operations will have one, finance will have one, and then it will actually get down to functions. So imagine marketing, digital marketing, sales, there might be B2B, B2C, or wholesale, retail. Operations, we've got several operations things. We'll have a scorecard for those things, and also there in the finance. So the idea is that every single person in the organization has got at least one measurable. And that can be something as simple as, here at Business Action, we answer the phone within 3 rings because I'm the receptionist. Or if we've got a customer service complaint, we respond within 24 hours. But once you get this scorecard really humming, every single person will know what their one measurable is, and they will be focused, laser sharp focus on that going forward. So that's 100% strong scorecards across the entire organization being looked at on a weekly basis, and with a measurable or 3 for every single employee. Back to you, Jeni.
Okay, let me share my screen again. Love technology when it works.
Stop sharing mine if that helps.
I always forget to hit that last button of share. Okay, so the next component is issues. So what happens when you start to look at those first 3 components around vision and people and data is issues in the business will start to kind of bubble up to the surface. Every business has issues, and not always negative, it can be opportunities, something can pop up that was unexpected, certainly through COVID. I know a lot of businesses that we know quite well, those issues have been, the good old P word through COVID of pivot. So, what can we do to survive this? What have we got? How can we use that in a different way? So certainly don't think of issues as negative. It can be negative and positive. But the idea here is have a way of actually an issues list where you've got somewhere to literally just list them down. You wake up at 2 a.m. thinking about something, things that, go on a list somewhere so that you get them out of your head. The other thing I like to, use issues for is create a culture in your business where people are happy to put up their hand and say, we've got an issue, because it's not going to be, oh, good luck with that, figure it out yourself. They know they've got the backing of the leadership team or their particular, could be sales, marketing, finance, whatever. They know they've got the whole team on board, that they will help them to solve that issue and explore it. So the first part of it is the issues list. A list somewhere we can write issues down. You don't get to a meeting and go, oh, there was something I was going to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. So making sure you've got those issues and they're coming to a meeting. And the second part of this is a process we call, as I said, we do like a good 3-letter acronym, IDS. So identify, discuss, and the most important part here is solve it. What are we going to do? Because who's been to meetings where you talk about something and you talk round and round and round and round, and then everybody leaves going, great discussion, and a week or a month or a quarter later you're having the same discussion because nobody did anything. Everybody thought somebody else would do something about it. And of course, nobody does. So issues list, really simple. Get things on a list so that you can then work through them and pick what's the most important thing. Let's tackle that first. And then the first part of this is identify. The problem is never the problem. It's always a symptom. So actually dig down and identify what is the root cause here. So website rock off track. What does that mean? Is it the website rock, or do we have a problem with the with the website developers, or have we not given them the information they need? What's actually the issue here? So dig down, identify the root cause of the problem. And then the second part is discuss it. Okay, let's talk about this, and let's discuss only until either the discussion becomes redundant or people start repeating themselves. Okay, let's move on now to the most important part, in my opinion, solve. What are we going to do to solve this problem so it goes away and it doesn't come back again? Because as I said, what normally happens is this: we go round and round and round and round, and everybody leaves the meeting going, yep, great chat. Nobody does anything. So what we're going to do here in this process is we pick the top 3. So Andy S, right seat. Number 2, we've decided the website rock is off track, is the second most important issue for today, and the anodyne merger is number 3. So we say, okay, Andy S, right seat, who brought up the issue? Let us know in 1 to 2 sentences what the issue is. So we always try and get people to come with the issue with it really pinned down so you can tell us in 1 to 2 sentences. So we're not going to get a whole story about, well, I saw Andy was on the phone the other day and then this happened and then went to the toilet and was there too long. No. What's the actual issue? In 1 to 2 sentences with no commas, what's the actual issue? And in our business, we're really, really strict on this. Tell us in that time, in that context, 1 to 2 sentences. So we tackle that. So we identify the root cause, we discuss it, and then solve it. Who is going to do what by when to solve our Andy S right seat issue? We create some to-dos that need to be done in the next 7 to 14 days. And then we say, okay, that's solved. Let's go to number 2. And we do exactly the same thing. We go through, we identify, discuss, solve, and we then go to number 3. So that's the issues track. It is literally get those issues on a list, a process of going through systematically and tackling issues. In some meetings, you might get through 1 or 2 because they might be big ones. In others, you might get through the 10 that are on your list, but it's systematically working through those and then having that follow-on process of the to-dos and making sure that people are working through and bringing on those issues and getting them solved. Sometimes I'll come back. Sometimes it's just an update to say, yep, this is what happened, we're all good. Other times, okay, I've had to kind of chunk it down. It's a big issue, so we've put some steps in place and we're working through those steps, but constantly working towards getting on top of those issues and having them go away forever. So that is the issues track. So let's now go to process. Now, I've worked in the IT industry for the last 25 years, and for us, having processes documented is huge because a lot of it's technical. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a handful of your core processes. So, the common ones we see: people, marketing, sales, operations. So there might be numerous ones of those. Customer service. What's your accounting function? So what we're looking at here is people processes. What are those handful of core processes where how do you attract the right people to the business? So what's that recruiting process? How do you manage them when they're on board? If they haven't worked out, how do you move them on? How do you go through that performance management process and staff reviews and those sort of things? So that whole process at a high level. What we want to do is have, whether it be checklists, because we want to document and simplify. We don't want a 700-page manual that when somebody starts, you give them this hulking great document, they're never going to read it, and it'll just sit in a desk drawer, and people will it's overwhelming. So it's about documenting and simplifying. So your process for people, identify the need. What is the actual role and what sort of person do you need to fill this seat? Define the seat. What's your position description? Having that process so all position descriptions throughout the organisation are consistent. What's your hiring process? What's your onboarding process? How do you make sure everybody's trained? I don't know where it came from originally, but what if you hire people and you train them and they leave? Well, what if you don't train them and they stay? So making sure that you're actually training people and keeping them up to date, again, particularly in our industry of IT. Certifications, somebody starts with certifications and they leave 7 years later with no more certifications. Their qualifications are out of date. Your lead, manage accountability. So what numbers do they have on scorecards? And if they haven't worked out or they decide to move on, what is your termination process? So just going through the organisation and going through that same process. But again, you don't want a 700-page manual. It's about having really simple processes and having everybody follow them. So it is that you're creating consistency. So somebody deals with me or with Debra or somebody else in the organisation, everybody gets the same experience. And, you know, there's not the Debra way of doing things and the Jeni way of doing things and the John and the Fred and the Bill way of doing things. It's consistency that we're looking for here. So systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. So this is high level documentation so that you're still allowing people to be them and bring that humanization into the business. We're not robots. So that is process, documented, getting things documented. The key here, as I mentioned, is followed by all. Create consistency by having everybody in the organisation knowing where everything is and following those processes. So there's a followed by all checklist. Have we trained people? How are we measuring them? Are we leading, manage and holding them accountable? And are we updating those that documentation as things change? Businesses grow and evolve, and it's, you know, you can't write it and set and forget. You have to continually updating. So what's that process around keeping things updated? You know, the reviews and quarterly, annual, whatever they are, but making sure that we are updating those processes. So that is the process component. Again, aiming for utopia at 100%, not going to happen, but making sure that we are at least 80% strong in the process component. To you, Debra, for the last part of the puzzle, which is traction. And you're on mute. That's $50.
Okay. Damn, there's not a bottle of wine. Okay, so we're on the home straight here now, and we're talking about traction. If you remember, Jeni always says vision without traction is hallucination, and it's really true. You can have all of this great ideas, but unless you're actually bringing it in and holding people accountable, it's not going to happen. So the way that we ensure that we have traction in the organisation is, again, two key components. The first, if I can get my line, is rocks, and making sure we break down everything into that 90-day world so we know exactly what we're focusing on for next 90 days. There's a really good reason for that. Humans just don't have the capacity to think much further than 3 months out. And so if you give them things that go longer than 3 months, they're likely to wander off on track, and they just don't do it. So getting those rocks in place and then running meetings. So rocks come from our VTO. They're very much around making sure we've broken down a 3-year picture into a 1-year plan with those goals, and then that leads to our rocks at an organizational level, a departmental level, and an individual level as well. And then the meeting pulse is probably one of the most important parts. And this is, I don't know if anybody went to university, if anybody here's a procrastinator. When I was going through doing my various degrees and things, I'd always leave it to the very, very last minute to get anything done. So when an assignment was due in, I would be up until 3 a.m. in the morning, making sure I was getting it done. Always got A's, thank goodness, but yeah, always leaving it last minute.
Isn't that normal? Isn't that what everybody does?
Apparently there are some people who don't work like that, but I don't understand it. Yeah. So with the meeting pulse, we're about making sure that we have got regular commitments to time to make sure people are actually doing these things when they need to be doing them. So we start with that 90-day world, and that means as a leadership team, we meet once every quarter, and we actually go through and review our previous quarter, look at the review the previous quarter, look at the quarter coming up, make sure we're resolving key issues. And then we've got this thing called meeting pulse on a weekly basis. And EOS has this thing called a level 10 meeting. And when I first heard about it, it was like, oh, seriously, meetings? I've worked in corporates, I've worked in council. Meetings are never fun. But I have to say this meeting pulse actually changes the way things are done. And my clients actually say that they genuinely enjoy meetings now. So meeting pulse, it's always on the same day. The reason being, we have to get this in our diaries. We have to make sure everybody is committed. It's always at the same time. So same day, same time, no qualms about that. We always start on time. We say that, being on time is late, or whatever it is. Make sure you're there before the meeting actually starts. I forgot what the actual saying is, but make sure you're there before it actually starts. And we're going to end on time too. There's nothing worse than meetings going over time. And we always follow the same agenda, which you kind of go, that doesn't make any sense. But when I share with you the agenda, hopefully you'll see why it makes perfect sense. Really interesting, working with a privately owned company the other day, again, around about 140 staff. We set the day and the time for them to run their level 10 meeting. And the CEO or the visionary sort of says, oh, well, I actually can't make that because I'm busy for the next 3 Wednesdays. I said, that's okay. This meeting will go ahead whether you're there or not. We will make decisions based on where the business is headed, and we will be carrying out those decisions going forward. So entirely up to you if you want to join us. She managed to clear her diary very, very quickly. And that's important, right? Because it's about a level of commitment from the leadership team to make sure that we're actually doing this. So the agenda, you will find it on page 13 in your workbook. And this is what it looks like. So it always has exactly the same agenda, and we always start with good news. So we start with professional and personal best from everybody seated around that leadership team table. And we ask this because we want to actually get them thinking about working on the business rather than in it. But we also want them to start with a positive as well. So professional and personal best gets them out of that fighting fires, all the stuff that's going on in the business, and gets them thinking about working on the business. 5 minutes around the table. Then we look at our scorecard, our 5 to 15 measurables. How are we going against them? And this is all about reporting only. So we'll just go, have we hit our finance target? If it's a yes, hey, high five, moving on, brilliant. If it's a no, we go, okay, let's drop that down to the issues list. So no discussion in this part here. It's just about going through our 15 measurables and going, are we on track or are we off track? Same with our ROC review. We go, right, we've got these company ROCs, and we've got these departmental ROCs. Are we on track or are we off track? Hey, Jenny, you had 2 ROCs. Are you on track? Are you off track? Deborah, you committed to 3. Good on you. Well done, Jenny. Deborah, you committed to 3. Yeah, you know what? One of them is off track. Okay, don't talk about it right now. Let's just drop it down to the issues list. And so that drops down to the issues list. And we go through all the ROCs in the same manner, just reporting, are we on track or off track? And then we cover a thing called customer employee headlines. As the name suggests, it's headlines. Is there something that has gone on in the business we need to know about from a customer point of view, from an employee point of view? Hey, I hear Jenny's taking a 6-month holiday. How are we going to fill that gap for 6 months? Hey, one of our customers gave us some amazing feedback. That's really cool. Or we've got an issue with the customer. And it's just about making sure that they're highlighted. Again, is there an issue arising from that? Drop it down to the issues list. So definitely reporting only at this time of the meeting. And this is where most businesses get stuck, because when sales don't hit their target, they want to tell you all about why they haven't hit their target. And then ops want to tell you about the customer complaints they've had. If you start to discuss it in this part here, you will waste time in the meeting. You will not get to the real issues. You may actually miss out on talking about what the real issues are. So just reporting on track, off track, anything we need to know. Then we review the to-do list very, very quickly. We had 27 to-dos last week. Did we get 90% of them done? If we did, yay, high five us, good on us, we're doing well. And if we didn't, drop it down to the issues list. If we're not getting our to-dos done, it probably means we have a resourcing issue or something deeper, maybe a right person, right seat issue. So 90%, we're sweet, off we go. And then finally, what we have is this great big long issues list that has come from the 2 a.m. wake up things that Jenny had at 2 a.m., from the stuff that Deborah was thinking about, plus the things from our scorecard, our ROC review, our customer employee headlines, our to-do list. And we literally then go through that IDS process that Jenny shared with us. So we go 1, 2, 3, what are the top 3 things we want to talk about? What's the most important, second most important, third most important? And we literally spend 60 minutes working through that IDS process. And sometimes you'll get through just one issue in that 60 minutes, a massive issue. It'll take 60 minutes to actually resolve it. Other times you'll get through all of them. I think the record we hold in EOS was like 72 issues in 2 hours in a quarterly session. So that was pretty good. But 60 minutes, never any longer. So when you get to 59 minutes, the person who runs the meeting says, hey guys, it's time to call this up now. What are we going to do in terms of our to-dos? So issues always create to-dos when they're solved. Right, we've solved that issue. Deborah's agreed to do X, Jenny's agreed to do Y, moving on. And at the end of the 60 minutes, we go, time to call it quits. We do conclude. And you'll see this in more detail in your workbook, but there are 3 parts of the conclude. The first part is recap the new to-do list. So from today's session, we solved 7 issues. It created 14 to-dos. Are we all clear on who's doing what? Yep, absolutely. To-dos are always 7-day items. So they should be done by the time we get back to the meeting next week. So we've got our new to-do list. Fantastic. What are the cascading messages? This is at a leadership team level. What do the rest of the organization need to know? So they need to know that Jeni's on holiday for 6 months. They need to know that we've got this issue with a customer. They need to know that we're changing this through one of our issues we resolved. And we just make sure that they're actually captured and shared to the organization. And then finally, we actually rate the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. And it's not about whether we liked the meeting, because good meetings should have robust discussions. We should be actually challenging each other's point of view and making sure that we're actually getting to the real issues and really solving them. So whether you liked it or not doesn't matter. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how did we work together as a team? Did we show up on time? Did we actually follow the agenda? Did we get caught up discussing things in that reporting component? Did anybody play on their phone, wasn't present in the meeting? Did anybody not turn up to the meeting? You're looking for how we actually did in terms of the way this meeting should run, and you give it a score on a scale of 1 to 10. I always say start with 10 and knock a point off for each thing that goes wrong. So Debra was playing on her phone again. Her dogs distracted her in the middle of the meeting. Jeni didn't feel we really discussed the issues properly, so therefore I'd give it a 7 as an example. And if you score it less than an 8 out of 10, you've got to say why, because it's all about self-correcting. We are adults, not children here. So as an adult leadership team, what could we do better next time round? We could tell Debra to get off her bloody phone and pay attention to the meeting. We could, get to Jeni to make sure she's actually really raising the real issue. So just make sure it's all about self-correction. We want to get 8 or more every time, but sometimes there'll be reasons why we don't, and just recognizing that and moving forward. So honestly, I love those meetings. They make such a difference. I've got a very, very small business these days. I got rid of the bigger business, but I've got just 3 of us in the business. And we sit down every Monday morning at midday and we go through it. And even with 3 people, it's amazing how this really keeps you on track and really helps you to get to the crux of those issues. Now, sometimes they'll be over in 40 minutes, and that's great. Consider free time a gift. Sometimes I'll take the whole 90 minutes. And when you have this running properly in your business, you'll have one at that leadership team level. You'll have one for each department and potentially one for each of the little mini departments in those departments. So the level 10 meetings go throughout the whole organization, and there'll be a lot less time in those the departmental ones rather than the organizational ones. Jeni, you were going to say something?
Yeah, one thing that we found when we really sort of got into the swing of these is it actually saved us time as a leadership team, because I knew that our meeting was at 2:30 on a Tuesday. So if I needed a decision made in my area of the business, which was people and culture, I knew that if I put that on the issues list, and then was the first one when they, whoever's running the meeting said, oh, what are we tackling first? I'd say mine. That I had the leadership team, I had everybody in that room that I needed for a decision to be made. So instead of trying to, have conversations with people or trying to get people together, that was our time, our 90 minutes. So I think one of our concerns implementing was, this is going to take us time. It actually saved time, because you just have that sacred time. All decisions makers are there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And also in larger organizations where you have got multiple departments and sub-departments, sometimes you actually have to push things back down as well. So, hey, this actually isn't a leadership team issue. We don't need to resolve this at this level. This is actually an operational issue. We give you, as the person who's accountable for operations, full permission to go ahead and solve this and come back to us and tell us what's done. So if you've got this operating properly throughout the organization, there's a real opportunity for not just cascading down, but cascading back up as well. So for example, sales and marketing might have an issue they cannot resolve. They can push it up and then have that dealt with at the leadership team level. So you're absolutely right. It definitely saves time in small businesses, in large businesses. It works across the board. So yeah, great tool. Definitely one of the favorites. And that when you've implemented your ROCs and your meetings, they're pretty much the foundational tools for the 6 key components of the model. And if you work on strengthening each of those 6 components, and you have to do it equally, there's no point in only focusing on data or only focusing on people. You got to get all of these things actually strong across the whole business. What you will find is that you'll have a business that is certainly a lot more fun to be in, is much more focused on what they're doing, and it will actually add money to the bottom line. So on average, the companies I work with, I would say easily 30 to 40% at the bottom line in the first couple of years. I've got clients who are actually reaching their targets for the first time, and they've got a 12-month target. They're hitting it in 8 months, and they've never done that before. So it's just that laser sharp focus that it gives you. Yeah, and that's how you get results. So that is they're the foundational tools. I'll just repeat them for you, and again they'll be in your that we've got. So we've got the Vision Traction Organizer. That's your 2-page business plan, answering those 8 questions. We've got the accountability chart, which Jeni talked about, which is very much around structure first, people second, making sure you've got the right people in the right seats. You've got your rocks, which is around making sure everybody knows in very succinct detail and very laser sharp focus what they're doing for the next 90 days. You've got your meeting pulse, which keeps the procrastinators in us on track and making sure that we're actually doing the things we need to be doing. You've got your scorecard, which I think, as Jeni said in the chat thing, it isn't just about making decisions, but it actually helps you keep people accountable as well. So you'll very quickly work out if you've got the wrong person. You know, I had a session yesterday with a client, a big kind of property team, and it was really obvious from the scorecard there was an issue in that property team. And so what do we do with that?
When we rolled out EOS into our business and sort of pushed it down through the team and scorecards, 2 of our most senior techs came to us and said, this whole EOS thing with scorecards and stuff that we've got to fill out each week, we don't really like it. So when are we going to stop doing that? And we said, never. And so one quit and the other one we set free to find an alternative path to success. So I always say it's like getting a bloody big spotlight and just shining it at every corner of the business. There is nowhere to hide. So if you do have somebody that is not performing, often they will self-select out.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Okay, so from a resources point of view, EOS obviously is a worldwide organization. There are a ton of resources available for free. That help first value we talk about, we absolutely live by it. So if you go to eosworldwide.com, you'll find a lot of things we've talked about. You can download fillable PDFs. You can find ebooks that explain more detail on them. They've got the Traction Library. I'm not in my workshop at the moment, that's downstairs, but you know, there's so many books and things that they actually have available to help you on your journey. There's those downloadable tools and videos and how to use them. There's Basecamp, which if you're working with an implementer, you have access to other little tools that will help on the way. There's people like Jeni and myself who are absolutely here to help you on that journey if you need the help. And that's pretty much it. So final thoughts would be very much choose and use a system. I was doing a podcast the other day and we're talking about the fact that, hey, that's not EOS. We're not going to be offended, but please, our desperate plea to you is choose and use a system, get what you want. That's how it kind of works. So any questions, we'll open up the floor. We can unmute you if you want to ask a question, or you can use the chat function. Would love to hear from you because we've been doing all the talking so far. And I can't actually see the chat function on my thing. Is it?
Bit of thinking music or something, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
So I guess where we go from here, well, I'll just wait and see if any questions come in. So I think we've mentioned at the start, so Debra's based in Auckland. I'm in Australia. Are your borders open yet? Can you actually leave? Oh,
yep.
Okay.
As from this week, things have changed. So it wasn't leaving that was the issue, coming back.
It was coming home. Yeah. They'd let you out, just wouldn't let you back in without.
So that's changed this week. So it's very exciting. Yeah.
So yeah, there's as Debra said, there's implementers around the place. If anybody is wanting a copy of the book Traction, which is I guess the nuts and bolts, it is the EOS story and written by Gino Wickman about 12 years or so ago now, I think. Happy to put one of those in the mail. If you are sort of process driven, I always recommend Traction. If you are more visionary, so that, sort of big picture thinking, like us, Get a Grip is, if you're familiar with Patrick Lencioni's style of writing, it's more, it's the story of a fictional business going through the process of implementing all of the, the light bulb moments and the, I think it's the accounts lady who is completely resistant. She's been doing her own thing with nobody looking at her for 20 years and she doesn't want to change. So it's just the people sort of, working through the process of changing and implementing a system like EOS. So, so it's a lot more, for me, a lot more readable. But Traction is designed that you can, sort of follow the process and, implement the tools. So happy to get any of those in the mail to anybody. And we'll reach out to each of you that we're here today as well and see if there's any more information that you need. So, but that's pretty much our prezzo.
That's it,
So
yeah, and we're here to
anybody who
help.
wants to stay around and have a chat, please do. We'll be around for another 15 minutes or so. But otherwise, thank you for attending. Really appreciate your time on this Friday morning.
Yep.
And we shall talk to you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeni. Always fun to do these things with you. And as Jeni said, yeah, we're here to help. So if you have any questions at all, you don't feel you want to say it here, you've got our contact details. By all means, just get in contact. We'll do what we can.
Fantastic. And have a great weekend.
Yeah.
I believe it's another weekend and it's March already.
Scary. Just going so fast. Thanks, Corinne. Thanks, Nick.
Stop that recording.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ken. I'll talk to you soon. And Corinne. And Nick, I'll probably talk to you really soon.